I was impressed with the River Rose Lounge, but
Go ahead, try it. He'll cue me first.
yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tammy Thompson. I work in the marketing office here at West Kentucky, and I'm just welcoming you all here and introducing the panel for you. I have Kelly Paul, who is an English instructor here at the college, and she's also going to moderate the event. And I have Evan DuBois, who is a instructor at the Paducah School of Art and Design, and Keisha Curry, who was with Out Paducah. So we also have some prizes to give away at the end of the day, but I was going to just turn this over to Kelly.
All right. Okay, well, hello. I feel like I'm so loud. Am I too loud? Yeah. Okay. All right, so our one book read this year is Jim Tomlinson's Nothing Like an Ocean. So if you took 101, English 101, you had to read all of this or some portion of this book. How do I turn it on?
Are y'all awake now?
Okay. Am I still on? Because I'm loud anyway. Okay, yeah. Okay, so anyway, I don't know how many of these chapters you read, but we're only going to really deal with 2 of the chapters today. What we're going to deal with is, within these chapters, there's some LGBTQ issues. Okay, and so we want to see how well, like, this author identified with these individuals and how it portrayed them. So again, if you already took this class, you probably wrote an essay about that, or if you've already read this, or if you're currently reading this. Is anybody currently reading this in your English 101? Okay, so you will have an assignment with this. And again, I don't know how many chapters you have to read, but if you are not assigned the ones that we're going to deal with today, make sure you read them anyway, okay, because they're really good. So mainly what we're dealing with is the first chapter is Angel, his rabbit, and Kyle McKell. Okay, and so again, if you've read that one, it's an interesting chapter, and I'm just going to give just kind of a brief synopsis of it, and then we're going to discuss it to see how we relate. And it's kind of hard because if you read it, the character in it, most of us can not relate with. Okay? So mainly we meet this Angel is the girl's boyfriend, and they live together. And but it takes us back in time. And so when we go back in time, we found out that the lady, she went to steal the camera because she wanted to go to DC on this trip. And instead, when she went in there, and the boy that was helping her was the son of the guy that owned the place. And when he left the room, she swiped the camera. Well, when he came back, it was obvious that she had swiped the camera, and she felt so bad she took it back out. Because you guys, this ringing a bell, you remember this now? Okay, so she took it back out, but he kind of made a deal with her. He said, the whole gist of it was, if you'll take pictures, I need you to take some pictures of me, and you can pretty much keep that camera. Okay, and then the author doesn't flat out say, oh, I want this specific kind of picture, but the author says that the person pushed over the magazine, so it was obvious what kind of pictures to take. Okay, and that he wanted to give these pictures to this other guy, right? But the main deal was he didn't want the pictures developed there in that town. So a lot of you out here, I don't know if you remember when we developed film. Okay, yeah, we actually had, yeah, okay, you developed film, and I mean, even sometimes you're like, I don't know, who's going to see these pictures, okay? And that was something that was a big deal to him because it's a small community, who's going to see these pictures? Because he obviously wasn't out to the people in that community. So, but he trusted this girl. So they kind of had something on each other. But anyway, so it goes through and it comes back. He comes back from Iraq. But he comes back, he had been involved in, he got blown up. Okay? And so he was missing a leg, and he had a prosthetic. But also, we have to add in this other character, Angel, in here. So Angel is the boyfriend, and comes in and walks in on the scene, and the girl is more like, well, kind of thinking, wish Angel wasn't there. But Angel, the more he drinks, the more questions he asks. And the more questions he asks, it doesn't go very well. Okay, and so mainly that's where we're kind of getting at, because we're trying to talk about, so, you know, what happens when he came back, and then what happened with the pictures. Okay, does anybody remember what happened at the end of the chapter? And again, if you haven't read it, we're going to destroy it for you. I'm sorry. But what happens? Anybody know? He burns them. Okay, he opens it up, and he burns all the pictures. And, but for her, she says she never even, she got 2 copies done, but she never really even looked at them. But the thing is, we're thinking about, well, why did he burn those pictures? And the main deal was, he had said, because that's not the same person I am now. And so, and again, so we look at this, we're like, wow, how do we relate to this? Because, you know, first of all, I don't know, I haven't been to Iraq. Okay, I'm not a gay man. That's not out. I don't know. I've never been blown up. How do we relate to something like that? And trying to get into the mind of how he would be feeling. So sharing with my friends here, just seeing what they would think, because again, I just teach this kind of thing. I want to ask like, a person in the community, and then also you work with Out Paducah, how you would see this playing out. So, and they had the questions ahead of time, so I'm not like, you know, making them do this on the spot. Okay? I wouldn't do that. So again, I'm just going to read them. In your reading, I guess, who wants to go first? You don't know? Evans first. Okay. In your reading, what does this interaction, that secret transaction, reveal about Kyle's understanding of his own sexuality as a gay teen in the South? Okay, so again, that's the deal with the camera that was stolen. Okay, so what does Dempsey's description of these photos reveal? So,
I think it reveals he's pretty comfortable with his body, and he's comfortable exposing it to the individual he's sending the photos to. I also think that he is trusting in this character, the female narrator, that she will keep his secret and kind of do a bidding that for some reason he's not able to do. Mm-hmm. And I think he also respects her, I guess, talent or ability to photograph him in that light, and thinks that she will keep that secret, which she does, which is admirable. So I think he feels comfortable enough to let her in. But it sounds like he's pretty comfortable stating who he is, and flaunting his body in that way for this secret admirer, or possibly a position in Chicago as a go-go dancer. So, I mean, that's how I saw it.
Well, the author never really tells us who that other person is. Just says that person's in Chicago. So we don't know. So what did you think?
So, the part of the question that says, in understanding his own sexuality as a gay teen in the South, you know, what does that transaction reveal? To me, you know, of course, we know what it's like in the South for a lot of different population of people, with the LGBT being one of those. He wanted to be private. At that point, he wasn't out. I know he wasn't out to his parents, because the story says later on, when he was in the hospital, that he told his parents. He finally told them. So it was still a secret. Like a lot of people who are part of the community, they keep those secrets for years. They only share with those who they trust or those who they love. And in this situation, he felt like he could share with this individual. Now, in my opinion, they didn't have a friendship prior to this. They knew of each other. They were not befriended, but when she attempted to steal the camera and he called her out on it, and then he made a request. And I think he kind of wanted to make that request initially because he was going back in the back room to get his own personal camera. But once he presented it to her, he kind of presented it as, well, you know, we're going to call this even if you would take these pictures for me. And those pictures being, like I said, the book didn't say what nature the pictures were, but here in the South, I'm from Mississippi, so I know, even going back home today, when I talk about out Paducah, people want to know why. People want to know if I'm gay, and I tell them I'm very heterosexual, but I believe everybody should be treated equally, and I think everybody needs to be educated so they can treat people equally. So you still hear the derogatory statements in the South, so that causes people to be more inward. One of the goals of Out Paducah was to bring the LGBT population out of the shadows. A lot of them don't live in secret, but they don't bring it up, I found. They don't bring it up. I've seen partners together who, if we're at an event, they might sit across the table from each other as opposed to next to each other. So LGBT community in Paducah that I know of is very quiet. So the goal of Out Paducah, one of the goals of Out Paducah was to start those conversations, which I thank God that that has happened because a lot of people are now feeling more comfortable to be their authentic selves. So just in the South in general, we've got a lot of education to do. We've got a lot of supporting to do because I know a lot of people have family members who are part of the LGBT community who are still very hush-hush. They deserve to be, they deserve to share their partners with the community just as well as I can share my partner with the community. I mean, I can be out in public and I can hold hands or I can kiss and nothing will be thought of as opposed to someone who's of the LGBT community. And people frown upon that, especially in the South. And I think it's ignorance, and I'm not saying it in a bad way. It's more that we've got to provide education. We've got to do something different in Paducah, in our southern towns, so we can provide support to the community. Dempsey was proud of her photos. I don't know what kind of photos they were. I don't know what positions he posed in. But she was very proud of her work, and I think it also said or it indicated that he was also very proud of the pictures that she took. So,
yeah. Well, that's a good. For number 2 was our follow-up that I think you actually answered was about you know how does that scene in the story with the camera, how does that describe the views of sexuality and sexual orientation in our region? And like you really just said that. So Evan, did you have something to add to that? No, I'm glad you segued right into it.
Well, I'm not from the South, so I don't have that particular experience. And I have a privileged experience of being welcomed by my family, many of my friends, when I came out. To many, it was no secret to a lot of people. That being said, I grew up in a privileged time post certain things that have happened. I don't necessarily know the year this story takes place, though from my understanding, I understand Kyle lost his limbs in one of the wars in Iraq. So we can kind of gauge what time period that is, but I think we forget the amount of access a lot of people in the LGBT community have to come out in safe spaces. Yet we need to remind ourselves that some people do not come out in safe spaces. And there's a lot of aspects of intersectionality that happen with that. It's probably much easier for me to come out in the Northeast as a white male than it is for many people who are of color, many trans individuals. So I think we're starting to have those conversations. Not everyone in the community has the fight at the same time, which kind of argues whether or not the community is there for one another. So I don't really know that I can speak to the aspect about the South, but I do think I can speak to that aspect within the community of accessing privilege at different points and accessing privilege in different regions, for sure.
Okay. So when it comes to the end of the story, and like I mentioned before, that he burns those pictures. So I mean, I don't know if it kind of came as a surprise to me, and I've read it 2 times, and I still kind of wrap my mind around why would he burn the pictures. And I'm like with you, I'm not part of the community, I'm an advocate, But I would think, well, why did he burn those? But he, and then how he responded was that he said he wasn't the same person. So I know it's kind of like an open-ended question, but how would you, why did he burn them instead of keep them? What would you think? It's kind of a hard question.
Well, I think his experience in the war and the trauma that he's gone through, nothing else matters. Initially he might have been secretive about his sexuality or sexual orientation. But at this point, it didn't matter to him because he'd already been through the worst. And it says in the book that he told his parents about it when he was in the hospital. I mean, he's over with it. He's done with that time of being private, and he just wants to be his authentic self at this point. And being that close to death is a realization that, I don't owe anybody anything. I want to be who I am. I want to be my authentic self. So I think that's the point where he's like, that's over with being hidden or being in the shadows. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
I think the war and the scars he has from that war queered his body more than his sexuality.
Oh, no, that's good.
I think it made him a non-normative individual in his flesh more than his sexual practices and who he loves does. So in a way, he's accessing that kind of otherness from a different standpoint. And I go back to when Angel was kind of interrogating him to show off his body. Normative people and people with normative bodies are constantly asking queer people to perform. And while he wasn't asking for his queerness in terms of sexuality to perform, he was asking the body to perform the way it is. Now that the individual has a disability and has been kind of marked, there's a whole nother way his body relates to otherness in general.
Right.
So that's what I saw from it.
Well, and then I can add on that what I saw was basically how he was showing off the arm and that she was like grossed out by it and that kind of thing. And I think back to, I'm even can be accused of that. When you're a kid and somebody gets a scab, you're like, you want to see. And it isn't like, and it's just a curiosity.
Right.
And it's just curiosity, but I think at this point, it seemed like Kyle, he just wasn't, he kind of exploded on him when he talked about the leg and how the mechanics of it worked. But yeah, it's like just like he was on show, he was on parade. And you should see that the Ashley really didn't want Angel there. And I think it would have gone down a lot differently if Angel hadn't been there. So I don't know, I know that wasn't your question. Do you agree, or disagree with that? If Angel had not been there, would it have still happened like that? I don't know.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I suspect that it wouldn't because Angel has no filter. He has none. If he wants to ask a question, he's going to ask it. And by him being a mechanic, I guess he was intrigued by the mechanics of his prosthetic leg. But we could also look at the fact that people who are uneducated seem grossed out by sexuality and sexual orientation when they don't understand it. And that goes back to the importance of education. But some people, you just can't educate, but you can, we've got to do what we can do, and that even starts with our youth. Out Duke is an organization for LGBT youth, and we don't just cater to those of the community, but other students as well who want to be support, who want to be advocates for their friends. And I've been amazed at the different types of students who are very supportive of their LGBT friends, and who, when I see them at my meetings, I'm like, oh, this person is okay, with his or her friend's sexuality or sexual orientation, and I think we start having these discussions and start, providing education. We're seeing a change over the past year. Al Paducah, and not to brag, was one of what is the first organization of its kind in Western Kentucky, because I've looked, because I've had a friend that was in dire need of resources and support for LGBT youth, and there was none, and that was what birthed Al Paducah. In doing that, I found out not only do our youth need support, but we have adults as well who need that very same support, if not more, because they've grown up in the shadows, or they've grown up not, well, in the closet, or not being out, however we want to say it. So it's just important that we continue to have these conversations, so we can, this should be something comfortable anyway. At one point, race wasn't comfortable. At one point, interracial marriages wasn't something that we discussed. But now it doesn't faze us. And I think the same thing needs to happen when it comes to discussion about the LGBT community. It shouldn't faze us.
And there has to be a safe space to have uncomfortable conversations. So many people don't have the language to frame what they're asking and what they mean. And as a member of the community, we can come off as very alienating and defensive. And like, we don't want to have those conversations about education. I think we'll probably talk about some other things in terms of what it means to assimilate and homonormativity in the next thing. But I think overall we need to have those uncomfortable conversations and be there for people to get questions answered, not at our expense, but for their own knowledge. And I think that's hard to do about any type of difference that we have, especially in the time we live in today in this country. So.
And to tag on to that, I kind of felt like when you're talking how Angel asked a lot of questions, Angel had also had quite a few beers. So he felt at liberty to say a lot of things he wouldn't say. And I kind of felt that I saw Kyle in the position as the token gay, right? And let's just ask him all these questions because he's going to represent all gay people. And it'd be kind of a weird situation to be in, because that, I mean, even earlier in the book, he said, oh, your gay friend, not your friend, it was the gay friend. And then now he's the injured friend. So he's just this labeled person other than just being, okay, he's my friend and he just happens to be gay. And that's all I thought was interesting about it. But I like what you said about having that conversation. A book like this is something that, you know, that would start a conversation like that. And so, and we were talking before, it's kind of interesting to think that, so Jim Tomlinson is not part of the LGBT community. So the question I asked was, and we'll segue into the next chapter, was can somebody that's not in the community portray people in the community from an accurate view? You know, it's kind of like, it's kind of a hard question, because, you know, within here, and that leads me into, I think I'm going to the next book, the next chapter in Shadow Flag. So if you haven't read that one, scroll through. We'll go to Shadow Flag. And that one's kind of, we're done with that one, right? Are we good?
What?
That other story, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the Shadow Flag. This one is interesting because these people were friends before. Okay, they were friends, but as little kids. And so we kind of got to get that in our mind. What was it like to be a little kid? You didn't really, I mean, maybe I grew up differently, but I didn't grow up here, and that's regionally. I had friends that, you know, Mexican friends, black friends, white, we didn't really, it wasn't an issue. We were just friends. And that kind of, I think Jim Tomlinson did that well in the book, because he had them, they were doing what typical little friends would do. And they were playing and that kind of thing. But now they're coming back later. And as I approach my 30th high school reunion, I'm like thinking back, I'm like, wow, I haven't seen those people in a long time. And what would they think if I go back to there? I mean, I don't know. It's going to be really weird, getting back together. But then we find out Jim Tomlinson talks about, he creates these characters, and they're very different. And it all comes together, and we'll just start discussing it, like how like, how did that come about? They knew her before she was a lesbian. They knew her just as little Marlene, as Merlene. So with that said, we'll go into, so basically the guy is, he had gone, the one friend, Randy, no, not Randy, who's the John. John comes and he lives in Chicago now, and it's a weird situation. So he's on his second wife, but the name is still the same. And so he refers to this person as like Carol too, and it's weird. And we're like, well, okay, that's, he's from Chicago, I guess that's what they do, right? I don't know. Well, so he comes, but he's bringing this Corvette that he had fixed. He had fixed it up. But he couldn't get a lot of money for it because I guess, I don't fix cars, but I know these things have to match. But he was going down to, obviously, like it says Bowling Green, so he's going to sell it. But we learned that why he's going to sell it is because he wants to give some money to get his kid into college, or to pay for at least part of it, wherever the kid's going. So he comes into town, and then it just happens to break down. And then we find out that the current Carol didn't want him to even go there. So we think there's some kind of weird backstory there, but we don't need to know all that at this point. We just watch how this plays out. Because John is the only one that really stayed away. So the other characters, we have Monk, who works at the auto mechanic. Randy, he takes these pictures, and the boudoir pictures, and as a photographer. And then Merlene. And Merlene, I don't remember what it says she really does now. Does anybody remember that? I know it said she left the town to go, and she was working as a coach at a college for tennis, but I really don't remember what he said she does now. But she's in the town. So they end up coming to all get together to shoot pool, and what plays out is just kind of a weird situation. And if you guys are younger, I don't know if you can put yourself in their feet yet, in those shoes yet. But if I were to go back to my reunion, I'd feel really just weird, because I know those people, but I don't know those people. I know them through Facebook, because I'm old, and we go Facebook, right? So that makes it better. He didn't talk about any social media, so obviously that makes it think that maybe it was before Zuckerberg got involved. But just watching this play out, and mainly the question is this, okay, so I'm going to read it. We see a complex layering of personal and cultural views regarding sexuality throughout this whole story. And we hear Monk and Randy, and they're making several derogatory comments, and they're like homophobic comments. And then John recounts when he first heard whispers about Merlene and about that she might be a lesbian. But he heard that a year about Merlene's sexuality, and that people in the town were whispering about it, okay, about her, they're starting to know, she's in high school, that she's going to be lesbian. So, yeah, we also see the close and loving relationship they have with Merlene. So I'm thinking, how do you, and this is what I would think was weird, how do you interpret or understand these characters, their relationships and their views on sexuality, in that they can make these homophobic, derogatory comments, but then there's Merlene. So it's kind of an open-ended question, so what say you?
It's
Evan?
narrow but honest, and queer people are not stranger to that type of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
Good answer, no.
I don't think the story talks about it with a lot of malice from those characters who are making those remarks. They're human beings saying things that human beings say all the time. What's different is no one's standing up and really correcting a lot of their language, which was surprising, but also not surprising. And it doesn't seem that Marlene really advocates for any understanding. But that's her choice as an individual. She doesn't have to be the token gay to tell people they're being insensitive.
Okay.
Marlene is just one of the guys. Marlene is, I mean, they've grown up together. They've always been together. So all they see Marlene is just one of the guys, one of us. And I think in the story, it kind of indicates that they really don't come together until, what's his name, comes to town. Is it John?
John, yeah.
When John comes to town, that's when they all four actually get together. And they don't, you know, if he's not around, they don't usually just meet up, you know. So she's just one of the gang, and their identity is right there within that core group, within their group. So her sexuality is zero concern for them. At any point it ever was. Did the conversation come up? I'm quite sure the conversation did. But the boys see absolutely nothing wrong with Marlene being gay because she's just one of them. It doesn't indicate anything about if she was more feminine or masculine. It didn't say anything like that. I know she played tennis or whatever, so she was athletic and she was good at it, and then she became a coach. But I mean, it didn't indicate, you know, like I said, was she feminine or more masculine. So it's just, we find, and even in the conversations, that it's okay for women to be lesbians and not okay for men to be gay. You know, it's easy to talk about two women other than two men being partners. You know what I mean? Transgender is a big conversation now because no one understands it, no one gets it. You know, how can you be born this way but claim you identify the other way? You know, so it's conversations that need to be had, and I personally, look, I will ask questions until I'm blue in the face because I want to understand it. I do. And I don't feel like I can be an effective advocate if I don't know. You know, there are some things that I might say that are inappropriate, and I learn from those mistakes. But this is my disclaimer. Look, I'm new at this and I'm learning. So, you know, I ask that you allow me the opportunity to get it right, you know, and don't take offense to what I say because I'm truly an advocate for the LGBT community. But it comes to, there have been conversations where I've sat there and I've not corrected people on statements that they made, and after the fact, I feel bad about it. I mean, I was in the barbershop the other day, and I was telling a friend of mine, you know, yeah, I started an organization, Out Paducah. Well, what's Out Paducah? So I started telling them, well, why would you go do that? Or why wouldn't I? You know, so it's like, well, I'm cool with gay men as long as they don't come at me. Well, who told you you were beautiful enough for somebody to hit on you? Let's start there, number one. You know, you might not even be their type, so let's start there. But I don't think you have an issue with someone hitting on you just because they're gay. So, you know, I did have to defend that fact. But it was a lot of other things I could have said because that opened the door for education. Right. You know, but being in a barbershop where it's predominantly male and you're heterosexual males, I kind of stepped back a little bit and didn't press the issue. But, you know, and I did press the issue that, you know, everybody deserves to be loved and cared for regardless of what their sexual identity or sexual orientation is or social economic status, their color or whatever. I mean, everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves to be their authentic selves. And I think when it comes to a lot of mental health issues within the LGBT community is because people don't feel supported and they don't feel that they can be their authentic selves, and that's what we got to make the change. So I mean, they are saying what they've been taught to say all their lives. I remember when I was growing up, my very rural Mississippi, Ashland, Mississippi, North Mississippi. My mom was a retired school teacher. Everybody in the community loved her. But my mom told me one day, if he can't use your comb, you can't bring him home. And that meant not to bring a white man to her house, you know. And that was what I was taught all my life, is that you don't do that until I learned better, until I was educated and learned better. So, and that's why I think education is going to be key. I can't express that enough because I know my eyes have been open to so much. And I've enjoyed watching Paducah evolve into a city that is willing to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that actually leads us to the next question about how different genders, how you accept the character's homosexuality. So like we saw the guys and they're just talking there, all this, you know, you're so gay and those kinds of things. And you start thinking that we've heard that. You kind of grow, and at what point is it not okay anymore?
Well, people are still
Yeah.
saying it. I mean, I
Yeah.
hear students say now, and I don't know what the issue is. Oh God, oh man, that's gay. Okay, is that a bad thing? I mean, they use it as though it's a bad comment, or you know, just loosely. And I mean, me with a teenage son, he'd be like, I hear him and his friends talking, and I had to tell him one day, I said, hey, I don't know why you think that's a negative thing, or why y'all like to call each other gay, but it stops. It doesn't happen here at my house. You know, if you're trying to use it in a derogatory sense. You know, so, and it's happening, adults even say it. I've heard adults make that comment, and I think it's ridiculous. But if we don't tell them any better, they'll continue to do the same.
Right. Well, and then, yeah, go ahead.
I'm a visual artist, so I deal with images, not words. I can't even describe language and how it's used and misused, and the rules change every day. And people don't feel the same way about language as we might all think. I think there is not a consensus to how language is used by different people and what words represent to different people. And sometimes people can embrace things that other people find to be bad words or dark words, or words that are inappropriate. For me personally, it's about intention, how you use the word, not how not who you necessarily use the word around. But I think, again, that's part of having uncomfortable conversations. And I don't know how, I'm not somebody who deals with words in that way artistically. So I don't know what's appropriate and what's appropriate of the author to even put that in a novel. Is it a representation of probably what's being said? Yeah. But is that the author's right to use that language and have it in a book to where if we read that book out loud, we're going to say those words and put that out into the universe? I don't really know the answer to those questions, and maybe that's the point. But I agree that there does need to be a reframing of how we look at many of the words that we're going to use and abuse continuously.
Yeah, because it seemed when they were in there and they were shooting pool and they were making fun of Randy, and they said that how Randy, like, I guess he spent $2,000 on the clothes, for the boudoir clothes, and then the other one said it was for, I don't remember the exact terminology, but it was like for the gay people. And my thought was, if you're Merlene, what are you thinking? I mean, like what we're saying right now with language, we seem to be at a point, like you said, where it's changing every day. And so, you know, we don't want to offend people, but at the same time, you're so used to saying something that you almost forget that you're offending someone. And that's why I'm glad that Al Paducah is here, because it addresses that, you know, and we're addressing how people want to be, you know, discussed. And yeah. But mainly what I'm leading to would be the next question too, would be about labels. I wasn't really going to talk about this until I read it, but it does lead into this next question. But it seemed that even in both these stories, there's just labels. So in that last story, the labels was, you know, Angel, he said something about, he said, if he were white, he'd be bilingual, but he's not, so he's ESL. So that's like a derogatory thing to say. And if you really think about it, yeah, that was, but then when I think deeper, because I overthink things to death, but personally, I don't know if Angel would have said that. I heard Tomlinson say that, which was still fine, because that's just my interpretation of it, but it was a neat interpretation to really, you know, Tomlinson's dealing with a lot of different characters and themes in here, and you think it should, you know, it's more than what it just seems when you get to it. But also, like with the label, you talk about how, okay, well, she's our lesbian friend. And, you know, but she says, you know, they were talking about, well, why did we go out? Why did they come back to their town? Why would somebody come back to a small town? And I kind of don't understand that because I'm not from a small town. I'm from a big place, Anaheim. I grew up in Anaheim, California. I lived in, South LA. Then I moved to Portland, and then I moved here. And it's really weird to me because I've been here 10 years and I'm still kind of getting the feel of this thing. Because to me, I would think people couldn't wait to get out of that town, yet they come back. And so when they were talking about coming back, first we had Randy, and Randy went off, and Randy was pretty, Randy was good looking. And part of this in there made it look like, that he was hit on. He went from different towns to Atlanta and Birmingham, and then he came back. So, and again, that leads us to wonder, we don't know. Is he homosexual? We don't know. Is he just afraid? Did he go home? We don't know. But that's what's neat about literature, is that you're going to put what you think into there. But mainly, again, we go to Merlene, though, the main character, she said she left, but then she came back. Okay? And so the question is, why? So I don't know, why would she want to come back? And that kind of goes to, we're on number 3 there. What did she say about where she lives?
This was the moment where I got mad.
Oh, okay.
This is the moment where I think maybe this author, I don't think this author really was able to capture the way queer people perform all the time. And the context of move to a big city and you'll be accepted. I mean, there are people that are going to be bigoted no matter what corner of the earth you go to. It just might hit you in a different way. It might be a little more subtle. It might affect things like your pocketbook more than it does your safety in a bar. But Marlene is living her truth. She felt more comfortable going back to a place where people knew her before the identity became a marker and something that she was known for, whether that be tokenized or not. But she talks about how it was much harder for her partner because her partner did not have that type of relationship. That partner was immediately identified as Marlene's significant other. Right, the Leslie. But I think that's still a view that we're looking at this lesbian couple through like a homonormative lens. That these two individuals move back to their small town, they live in the same house, and they assimilate to the culture that they have to survive in. And that is the reality of what queer people are constantly doing. They're constantly shifting to be comfortable in their surroundings. I, in many of my circles, am considered a privileged Republican for my views about queerness. Yet, I go home and my friends think I am a crazy rebel for coming out at 17, whereas everyone came out at 25 and got married a year later. Maybe I don't want to get married, and that screws up people's ideas of what queer people have been fighting for. The reality is I would rather stay employed at this institution than have the ability to be married. But I have people who that freedom to marry who they want is really important to them, and I don't want to take that away. So we're not a monolith. We're going to value different things, but I think that's what the author doesn't really shed light on, is that queer people are constantly performing and having to think about their safety and the tolerance of others. So they're adapting, and they might take on different personas in that process. But that doesn't really ever get to the true root of who they are or what they believe. So, I don't know, that's where that got me angry.
Yeah, I struggled with the partner because she brought home the person, and the woman is not from there. And so right away I think in a relationship, how long is that relationship going to last? That's going to be a major strain on that relationship when, I mean, it wasn't just that she was known as Maureen's girlfriend or lady friend, it was Maureen's Leslie. And so that label, if I had happened to be Maureen's person and I had to live in a town where I was just known as the Leslie, that would be very difficult.
Well, in the author's defense or the character Marlene's defense, she recognizes her partner might not have the same experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I don't have the same experience as everyone in the community.
Right.
And not everyone in the community has the same experience as me. And we disagree on a real lot. You can look at how somebody in the presidential election was treated this cycle to see how queer people can disagree about other queer people. So I think that that's really important to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm trying to think where that.
I mean, in a sense, I kind of get that Merlene's view of being back home, that she is viewed as just being Merlene. She's one of the four that I've always been together. No one thinks any different of her sexuality, her sexual orientation. But the fact that she can come there and be Merlene, it what makes her comfortable. And like you said, now I didn't even think about the issue with her partner having a struggle, but I'm glad y'all brought that up because it will be. I mean, it can be tension, cause tension within that relationship because, you know, Merlene is just Merlene, but then her partner is her Leslie friend, you know, and that's putting a label on her because, again, you don't know her, you know, and because that community doesn't know her, they automatically put the only label they knew of on her. So they tagged her with that, and that is something she's going to be living with as long as she's in that town, you know, because it's a small town. I know growing up, like I said, in Mississippi, the South, you know, once you're labeled, you are labeled for life. You can be the town drunk, you're going to be town drunk for life, even if you're sober for 20 years. If you are going to be a lesbian in Ashland, Mississippi, everybody gonna know that that's that lesbian there. I can't let my kids go spend the night at her house. I don't want to be seen in public with her. I mean, just that stuff because that's the label. You know, now Paducah, I can't speak for Paducah because I wasn't raised here, but I do know for the small town that I was in, you know, I'm thinking we've grown up and we've educated ourselves, but the conversations I have when I go back home, even to this day, is shocking to me. A friend of mine didn't want her daughter to share a dorm room with another girl because she identified as lesbian. Well, I don't want her in the room with that, and she used a derogatory statement, and I said, what you think is going to rub off? What you think? I mean, is that what you're thinking? Well, I don't want her to be trying to turn my baby out. No, that ain't the way that works. Now, your baby cute, but she might not be all that cute to her. You know, so, you know, I mean, I get that, because once labeled, always labeled, a lot of times, you just can't shake it. That's all I have on that.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I guess that brings us to, like, so both Kyle and Merlene, and we've talked about how they've dealt with their sexuality, but they really felt there's like a degree of isolation there. And especially when we go back to Kyle, it seems like the first person he really came out to was Ashley, to get the camera and the pictures. And then you look at Merlene, and her situation was different. We're not told the story of where she came out. It just became known that it was whispers that she's probably lesbian. And so thinking about like times like now in Paducah, right now, if we had people, I guess the question would be, what do you suggest would be someone who's struggling with that right now, with their identity, and I'm more for out Paducah, but not even just that, but also like for parents who they know their child is struggling, and you know, what can they do here in Paducah now? You know, or what could you do?
Unfortunately, what I'm finding in Paducah is that the parents are not supportive. And it may be out of embarrassment, misunderstanding, or whatever it may be, because we do have a lot of students who do reside in the McCracken County area who have been asked to leave their homes because they have come out. So, you know, let's just start there. I mean, because, you know, that's going to be key. If I can't get support from someone who should know me better than anybody else, who can I get it from? You know, but I find that a lot of youth are open and accepting. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the best way I can describe it is they don't care what your sexual orientation is or anything. And I talk about it to a lot of youth who don't identify as LGBT. And I kind of ask them, you know, so how do you feel? Or how does it make you feel? Or, you know, how's your relationship between this person and that person? And it's like, they're human. I mean, what do you mean? I don't understand. Am I supposed to act a different way? So some of our youth don't even realize that they should act a certain way around somebody who's LGBT, which is a good thing. It's the adults and the parents who are struggling the most that causes students who are LGBT not to come out and not to be their authentic selves. So that's what I'm finding. And Out Paducah wants to provide that education by starting parenting groups coming up soon, and to initiate GSAs in the public school system, because not only do students need the support outside of their school system, but also within the school, they need safe places. Transgender students don't know what bathroom to go to, because you can't go in this one because you identify or you look this way, and you can't go to that because they know you used to be the other way. You know, just that struggle alone. And Paducah Tillman is one of the schools that does not have a gender-neutral bathroom. McCracken County has done very well with that. Marshall County, I think they have one. So I'm asking these students these questions, you know, about, especially those who are transing, going through that process. What do they do? And a lot of them say, I just wait till I get home. And that's hard. So it's going to take parents who are supportive to say, hey, these are the needs for my child to be successful in being their authentic self, and this is what I need y'all to do. But parents are so unaware, or they will be accepting and just hopeful that everybody else would accept. You know what I mean? I don't know how to quite explain it, but, you know, oh yeah, I love my baby. My baby can be whoever, and that's not going to change anything, and that's awesome. But are you advocating on your child's behalf?
I think it's incredibly complicated to talk about queerness because it's an identity and a sexuality, and those two things don't always line up in material. And that is why probably we have such a hard time with labels and language. I think what's important is that we as individuals are here for people's experiences, whether or not they line up with the acronyms that exist in the community. People are allowed to have their experience and call it what they want, and maybe they don't want to be othered for that experience if it's not their identity. Sexuality and identity are playful things, and you're going to experiment with them throughout your life. But you have to be respectful that other people are experimenting with them too. And that can be frustrating when you're trying to politicize a moment for progress. I think any marginalized group can understand that. And that's hard to move all together, all boats rise at the same time. Never really works, but in theory, that's what we're supposed to do. The reality is that queer people feel isolated wherever because they're adapting to what's around them. But I don't think we talk enough about mental health and some of the issues that surround these identities, particularly trans individuals and trans youth. I don't know the answer to that question. I think organizations like Out Paducah are really good at bringing community outlets together. The reality is the younger generation does not see that division of our parents. So there is progress being made. Some will argue it's too slow. Some will argue it's too fast. My only advice to anyone struggling or playing around or having these experiences is that they check in with themselves, and be leery but open to trusting others.
Yeah. When it comes to that, I wouldn't advise anybody to Google. Because
yes, true.
when you Google, you will get negativity across, some positive, but you've got to read through the negativity to get to the positive that you found on Google. So Google is not a good place to go, not a good support, not a good place to try to educate yourself. Just talking to someone. I encourage anyone who is struggling with a sexual identity or gender orientation, talk to somebody, find that safe somebody. And I think that's why it's important even in the school system to, identify those safe spaces, those teachers and educators who are familiar, and who want to advocate on your behalf. And unfortunately, that's one of our biggest problems is students can't identify those teachers, and those teachers don't have to be a part of the LGBT community to be a safe place. So in dealing with that, please talk. Therapy is a wonderful thing. I know a lot of people say, I can't afford therapy, but you'd be surprised. We have some therapists who are wonderful in this area who are what I call, and I might be saying it the wrong way, LGBT friendly or knowledgeable. You find some doctors who, if you have a trans male student, don't understand that process. So, of course, that student still needs to go to the OBGYN, but it's educating that provider on what conversations to have and how to approach that. And I'm finding that, we have no tact, when it comes to some things. We really don't. So, Out Paducah meets every second and fourth Monday at the Zone at 6 o'clock. I know it's for youth, but anybody is welcome to just stop in. We can exchange information, we can talk, whatever you need. Out Paducah wants to be a resource. We don't just deal with youth, but we help people find, temporary housing. We might assist with that, whether it be monetary or just, connecting them to the appropriate resources. Out Paducah's desire is just to provide the support across the board, whatever it may be. My vision for Out Paducah was to allow everybody to be their authentic self. And if there is any barrier to that, Out Paducah wants to address that barrier and help you find the appropriate resources to correct it or to make it a better situation for you. So that's the goal of Out Paducah. And prayerfully and thankfully, we've been successful in doing so in a lot of different situations where there was a student, well, not a student, but a young lady who was walking the street barefooted, had just been discharged from the hospital, and I just so happened to have been walking from the hospital, and I just stopped and asked what her problem was, and we got to talking, and it ended up that she was being kicked out of her sister's house. She just relocated from Florida and was kicked out of the house, couldn't go back. So, thankfully Out Paducah was able to put her up and help her get back to Florida. So, I mean, things like that are huge. However, being able to provide a binder to a trans youth, y'all, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, the joy it brings when you see the tears in that baby's eyes or in that child's eyes saying, this makes me feel more like who I am, has been the most fulfilling thing that has happened to me in so long. To me, it's a binder. It looks like a tank top to me, but I just know that that's something that trans males need. So I said, hey, would you like a binder? Are you serious? It was a big issue. You thought I gave them a car. That's how serious it was. And that opened my eyes, too, to the needs of our youth in the community. And like I said, it's not just youth. We have a lot of adults who are not being supported and who are not feeling free to be their authentic selves, and we need to do something different. We definitely need to do something different in Paducah. Well, McCracken County as a whole.
Yeah. Well, we do have a group here, I think that meets on Wednesdays, a GSA, and so, I mean, that's available. I'm trying to think of how we want to wrap this up, but I got to shamelessly plug my class. As most of you are out there registering for the fall, I have a class, and I'm doing it differently than his book, but it's an online class, and it's English 233, and it counts toward a humanities or a cultural studies, so it's not just an elective. But I'm taking a different look from it in that the books I'm using, and I brought them because I'm trying to plug them, were by people in the community. Okay, so like James Baldwin was in the Harlem Renaissance, awesome. Okay, this, if you're interested, if you're in this class, these are the books we're going to read. This is on Netflix right now. There's a series, there's actually two, but the first one from 1993 is the one that follows this book. So if you kind of get a look at Netflix and you watch it and it looks kind of interesting, we're going to read that, and you would think, wow, how do we get to read that in this class? This book was actually part of PBS's 100 book read and 100 best books. So, I mean, I didn't just arbitrarily like choose these books. And then the other one we're doing is it's called Fun Home, and it's something I'm going in a different direction of what I'm comfortable with, but I'm stepping out of my zone because it's a graphic novel. So, and it's really interesting. But each one of these, the class is mainly dealing with writers in the community and how it's changed, how writers have changed. But it's online, and hopefully in the future it will be on campus as well. But if you have any questions about, if you're interested in this class, stop by, or you can contact me. I live in Rosenthal, so you can stop by my office and I'll talk to you too. But again, it's different because with this writer, he was not a part of the community. These ones are. And so it's just, to me, it's interesting. So.
Thank you, Kim.
Oh, the name of it is it's called Tales of the City. I brought there's like 9 actual books in the series, and I realized I brought the second one because I'm on the 6th right now. But yeah, it's Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City. So it's pretty interesting, and it deals with a lot of issues.
It was a TV show, and then they just made like a Netflix lawn movie about it. Yeah.
Right, so if that's interesting, the class is interesting too. So.
She was telling me about this class when I came in, and I just got emotional for some reason. I might just be in my feelings or whatnot. But this is huge to be having here in Paducah. Just these conversations, a class of LGBT literature is something you don't hear about often. And so I think it's amazing that she's been allowed to do this, and I encourage anybody who can and will to take advantage of it, because it'll bring about good conversation. It'll bring about, a willingness to know more. You spark your interest to just learn more about the LGBT community. I think I wish I could attend. I do.
Well, we want to thank everybody, Kelly and Evan and Keisha. Just give them a round of applause, please, for being here today. I have a few things to give away, a couple of books, Jim Tomlinson's books. I want to let you know that he will be here on March 17th and 18th. We have a reception at 6 o'clock in the Student Center. You're all invited. And then his presentation is at 7 o'clock, followed by a book signing. But he will have a student presentation at 11 o'clock on March 18th, also in the Clemens Fine Arts Center. So, and he will sign books after that. And so I have a couple books to give away, but I think Shavine may have something she'd like to say. This is Shavine Herring-Duncan. She is our director of our Diversity and Inclusion Office here on campus.
I would just like to say thank you for being part of this panel discussion. Also, as we move forward as an institution, we are in the process of developing and going to have in print WKCTC Welcome safe space signs for faculty, staff to be able to display, to encourage students that this is going to be a safe place, and you can identify where the safe places are on the campus. So just want you to know that and to share that information, and more will be coming available the closer we get to actually distributing those safe space signs. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, we have 2 books to give away and 2 West Kentucky coffee mugs, and Kelly's drawn the names, so we're going to give away a book.
28.
Number 28.